It's Michelle Miller here, also known as the Farm Babe. Farm Babe on social media. You guys can find me at the Farm Babe is my handle on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, all that good stuff. And I just wanted to connect with y'all today with dietitians and consumers so we can all talk about food and farming. So if you guys have any questions today, definitely put them in the comments. I'm going to do my best to answer them. So like I said, I'm the Farm Babe. My website is thefarmbabe.com, where I really work to bridge the gap between consumers and farmers and give science a bigger voice in the food and farm space. So I'm here in Northeast Iowa, coming at you from the straw bales behind me. I'm up here in the hayloft. A couple of things we grow: oats, hay. We grow corn and soybeans, raise beef, cattle, and sheep. And so that's a little bit about my background with what we grow here on the farm. And whatever questions you guys have, I just wanted to connect. You know, it's really important for farmers and dietitians and everybody to come together. You know, there's so much misinformation out there, especially maybe in like the nutrition world with diet and exercise. People are always falling for the latest trends and the latest fads. And oftentimes that's just not based in science. Sorry, I got a call coming in. And so oftentimes it's just not based in science. And so it's important for dietitians to connect with real commercial farmers to learn the facts. So some of the things that I really tend to focus on are like myths surrounding factory farming or big ag or GMOs or pesticides or anything like that that people have questions and concerns about. Just this past week, I was visiting some friends of mine in Chicago, and I always love going to big cities because when my friends figure out what I do, they have so many questions, and oftentimes we're wondering, where do we go for those answers? And so, you know, one of the things I really like to talk about is pesticides. I know some of my friends were just like, oh, you know, we only buy organic. We really want the healthiest food possible, or they worry about what to feed their kids. But the interesting thing about that is that organic doesn't necessarily mean pesticide free. In fact, sometimes organic can use more. Sometimes it uses less, sometimes it uses more. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just oftentimes you have to look at the pest pressure. So farmers don't want to use any chemicals. Believe me, they're very expensive, they're time consuming. But if you have something like an orchard where you can't manage that tree, you can't just cut it down and start over. You've got to use chemicals to manage insects and disease and weeds and all those good, well, not so good things. And so you have to just utilize the science that we have in crop protection and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is how we can fix it. And so organic a lot of times might use more pesticides, but they're just naturally derived. But natural means nothing in terms of toxicity, so you just never know. So it's really important to go to the source, to connect with farmers direct. On our farm, you know, I've got a little like organic garden, you know, nothing crazy. And then we grow some GMO and some non-GMO crops. And one of the questions we get so often on our GMO crops, you know, people just think that we have to grow Monsanto, we have to grow GMOs, we have to grow all these and spray all these chemicals. And that's just not true. So when we use herbicides on our GMO crops, for example, we're using about 22 ounces per acre. So if you think of that, 22 ounces, that's like less than 2 beer cans on an area of land the size of a football field. So it's very minimal. We mix that with water, we use a sprayer, and then everything is very regulated and tested. So when we go to sell any type of crop, this is especially true for like the fruit and vegetable industry. They will get tested for residues and safety, and so your food is very safe, regardless of how it's grown, because there are so many regulations, withholding times before you can do that. And for farmers like us to spray any type of pesticide, we have to have licenses, certifications, ongoing trainings. We're not just out there like just throwing chemicals on everything. We really don't want to, I promise. Sometimes it's just necessary. But those are just a couple of myths that jump out at me right off. Oh, sorry. I hope you guys are there. I got a text message and I was trying to get rid of it. So anyway, those are just a couple of myths that I like to debunk right off the bat. But if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. I'm just going to kind of swirl through here. Oops, what did I do? Okay. So we're back. And I hope that I'm doing this right because I don't do a lot of these Facebook Lives, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I had not seen any questions coming in just yet, but by all means, throw them my way. I do have a couple other notes here. You guys as dietitians, I'd be curious to know what kind of questions you guys get. Are those some of the biggest concerns? I feel like a lot of times too, we all care about animals, right? And you'd be hard pressed to find a farmer that doesn't care about animals more than anybody. I mean, not only is it the right thing to do, but it's our business and our livelihood. And so the more comfortable you have animals, the better they'll perform, the better they'll do. And so it's in our best interest to keep pens clean and keep their bodies healthy. So we use vaccinations. There might be biosecurity efforts. Like if you've ever been to a large scale like pig or poultry farm, there is biosecurity where you have to actually take a shower before you even go into the barn. So you don't bring any sort of diseases or bacteria or anything like that into the barn. So with these biosecurity efforts over the years, you're able to mitigate any type of disease. So say maybe back in the 90s, maybe when technology wasn't advanced, you could just walk into a barn and oftentimes farmers would have to put antibiotics into their feed or water to prevent or to constantly be treating. And nowadays, that's pretty much non-existent. I mean, every so often, you will still get farms that have to use antibiotics, but if they do, a vast majority of antibiotics actually now require a prescription from the veterinarian. And so these are all regulations that have come through the VFD or the Veterinary Feed Directive through the FDA. So back in the day, were antibiotics a little bit of an issue? Sure, absolutely. But now we see these improvements in biosecurity, regulations, genetics has played a big role in ensuring that we've got the best possible breeds and the best possible disease resistance. Oh, here's a question. I love it. I often hear from people who think food and meat is better if it comes from small farms or large farms or all owned by big corporations, i.e. big ag. Oh, and tell people about my Burger King account. Yeah, I should. Okay, thanks for that, Leah. I really appreciate that. So that's the other thing. Our farm is like mid-size. We've got a few hundred head of cattle. We're not considered like a CAFO, probably not considered like big ag or anything like factory farms, which I hate those terms. We'll get to that in a minute. But, any farm can do a good job, right? Like I'm very proud of how we raise our livestock, but we don't have like any of the crazy technology and the computer, like the largest farms sometimes have the best technology. Like they've got the best infrastructure with the barns. You can get like a Fitbit on your cow that tracks like hundreds of different data points. So it's super interesting to be able to know exactly what's wrong with whatever animal that's coming straight from your veterinarian. So the veterinarian that works on farms can look at the data and say, ooh, cow number 1467 only took X amount of steps today. They know how many times she chewed her cud. They know how many steps she took, how much she ate, how much milk she produced. And there's all these different ways that can track it. So can a small farm do a great job? Absolutely. And you can't argue the fact that when you see like beautiful cows on pasture, like it's just beautiful and it tells a great story. But that doesn't mean that larger scale farms aren't also doing an amazing job. Like I said, it's in any farmer's best interest to do the best work that they can to care for those animals. So that's, big ag and factory farms are definitely some myths that drive me crazy. Somebody here asked the NonGMO Project, let's see, aside from the NonGMO Project, which activist organizations do you consider notorious for promoting false or misleading info about food? Hashtag Team Fiance. Thank you for that, Dustin. Hashtag Team Fiance, I might have to use that. So Fiance is my farm cat, and normally she is in every single one of my videos, but I bet she will show up. So I fed her before I came out to do this because I didn't want her like climbing all over me and knocking over my tripod. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna feed her up by the house and then come back out here, but I know she'll hear me. She'll be here. Just give it time. As soon as she's done with her lunch. She is the best farm cat ever, and she's in like every one of my videos. But aside from the NonGMO Project, yes, the NonGMO Project drives me bonkers. They spread so much misinformation. And there's so many groups out there that are doing this. A lot of it comes from animal rights activists. You know, like if you see movies like Food Inc. or What the Health, different documentaries, a lot of them are not speaking the truth. Like Stonyfield Organic is probably one of the worst food companies out there in terms of misinformation. They funded movies like Food Inc. And so there's so much misinformation, but you always have to look at who funded it and like what is their motive. Like people watch What the Health and then they say, oh my gosh, I went vegan after watching that. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what they wanted. Like that's who funded it, was the animal rights activists. And you have to take a step back and look at the science. Science doesn't sell. It's not sexy. It's not going to draw you in like a celebrity or a fear-based, Netflix movie, which is probably one of my biggest things I wish our industry could improve on, is like, how do we make farming sexy? And it's kind of hard to do. Like, how do we make science interesting? So I think that's really important. So yeah, like Stonyfield Organic is awful. The NonGMO Project, Chipotle is like on my never eat at again list because of all the misinformation they've spread. But back to Leah's point, Burger King, we should always be advocating for agriculture. And even though there's some industries out there that are spreading misinformation, what happens when we speak up? What happens when we as farmers or dietitians step to the plate and say, wait a minute, this isn't true. And so Burger King had put out this misleading ad that was talking about cow farts and basically making it sound like cow farts are destroying the planet. Now, there was so much wrong with that. First of all, 97% of methane from cattle comes from this end. It's never about farts. So that's the big myth right there. They were claiming that if you feed methane to cattle, it could reduce emissions, and just basically completely blowing everything out of proportion. If you look at the actual EPA statistics, cattle account for approximately 2.5% of greenhouse gas emissions here in the US, and that's according to the EPA. So it's a very small percentage. Then you have to remember too, after we eat meat and get leather, there are hundreds of byproducts that we get from cattle, like adhesives, textiles, lotions, soaps, cosmetics, musical instrument strings. There's a ton of cool stuff that we get from livestock as byproducts. There's a really great TED Talk out there if you guys get a chance to check it out. It's called How Pig Parts Make the World Turn. How Pig Parts Make the World Turn, TED Talk. 185 uses for a pig. So we're sitting here going, oh my God, we need to give up meat. And it's like, no, it's a lot more than just meat. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I talked to Burger King. I sent them a tweet and I explained why we in agriculture were so offended by this ad. And we had a Zoom call and I said, look, if you want to learn about sustainability and what we're doing on our farms, like, come on out, I'll show you. And they actually took me up on it. And so it was great. We had the chief marketing officer, Burger King, out here. We had Gustavo, who did the ad for the agency that worked with Burger King. I had methane experts. I had ruminant nutritionists. I had the Iowa State Professor of Animal Science, Iowa Farm Bureau, just put together a great group of people as best as I could, given COVID travel restrictions. Everybody was kind of local. But they were amazing, and we had such a great dialogue. They filmed the whole day, and now stay tuned because they're putting together a video to showcase farming, and I love it. It's not yet released to the public, but I've seen it. I'll be really excited to share it with you guys when it comes out. It's currently in Burger King's legal team, but that was something I was so excited about because it just goes to show that advocating, we can do it. It only takes one voice, right? Like all it took for me was a tweet. And so it was just really refreshing to have a food corporation actually take the time to listen and learn. So I just loved it. So check it out. Hashtag Cows Menu was the ad, but I've written about it. You can check out my Farm Babe Facebook page and look it up and see what we got. All right, next question is Megan. A common question and concern I hear is, why is organic produce smaller in size? Do conventional foods use growth hormones, and organic always tastes better? Can you speak to this? Sure. And taste is relative, right? There's plenty of times out there where people say, oh, this organic, it tastes better, and that's fine. If there's a reason why it tastes better, maybe it's fresher, maybe it's more local, maybe it was picked at a different time. I'm not sure. As far as, so there's many different factors that can affect taste. Soil can even make a difference, right? Like I was just in Alaska and they were talking about how much bigger the produce is there because they have 20 hours of daylight and different soil types. It's a colder soil. It creates a more flavorful, maybe higher in sugar content. Like it's really interesting how soil can play a role. So yeah, there is definitely some truth to that. Growth hormones, no. Okay, so growth hormones is a great one to talk about. So there is actually no such thing as added growth hormones in poultry or pork. How about that? You go to buy chicken in the grocery store, it says no added hormones or steroids. But if you read the asterisks in the fine print, it says federal law strictly prohibits the use of hormones in poultry. It doesn't even exist. It's just marketing. So yeah, ignore anything that says no added hormones because it's not a thing. Now, growth hormones can be used in beef cattle. And we actually do use them on our cattle sometimes. It's just a little pellet that goes under the ear and it naturally kind of just dissolves and it does help cattle put on more weight. But a lot of farmers aren't really using it much anymore. We do sometimes we don't because we just don't know if there's enough ROI on it anymore, return on investment, because when you're working with good genetics and proper diets and handling, they're going to naturally gain well. And obviously as farmers in business, like that's what we want. Like, let's be real, farming is still a business. And so we get paid per pound when we sell. However, if they get too big, we also get docked. So they want that perfect, 1,300, 1,400, give or take a little bit, Black Angus steer from us as like a corn finished feedlot here in Iowa. But yeah, there's no nutritional difference though. There's like a fraction of a billionth of a gram difference. So whether you're having a steak that's been treated or a steak that's not been treated with a hormone, either way, it's nutritionally equivalent because you're looking at a fraction of a billionth of a gram. Also, all of our food naturally contains hormones. So whether you're having a burger or a burger on a bun, chances are the bun might actually have more hormones than the burger. Everything naturally contains hormones. So that's a little bit of a rant on hormones. Is produce smaller? I'm not really sure. It could have to do with the size of the farm or the uniformity. I feel like when you have a large scale produce farm, or like, for example, I was on a larger scale potato farm. We'll use potatoes as an example when I was out in Idaho. I mean, these guys have perfected the potato crop for decades upon decades and thousands upon thousands of acres. Like, they know potatoes, or even us here in Iowa, corn. You just know how to get the best, biggest yield because that is your perfected crop. So these are the types of farmers I think it's important for us to connect with. Like, because you can have a backyard. I've got a garden. Like, half the time my stuff looks like crap. Like, I set it and forget it. I'm not an expert at growing 30 different garden vegetables, right? Like, it's just a hobby for me and something I do. So could you have like an organic farm at your farmer's market where it's like, well, we didn't put anything on it and it's like misshapen? Well, that's why it's misshapen. That's why maybe it didn't develop to its full potential because it's more of a hobby. So that could maybe explain that. Let's see if there are more comments here. Yes, Chipotle's gross. I hate Chipotle. But go Burger King, go Culvers. I'm a huge Culvers fan. Their marketing is like, thank you, farmers. They like love and appreciate us so much. I love them. Still think it's cool that Burger King accepted. Thank you for encouraging registered dietitians to advocate. Dietitians, nutrition students don't always feel confident. Yeah, I totally understand. That's the problem, right? Is so many people don't get exposed to farming. So I like to be here as a resource. I know I talked about it earlier. I'm thefarmbabe.com is my website. But I do international keynote speaking. I speak to universities, schools, farm conferences, all sorts of different stuff to really talk about this. I travel all over the world and love learning about farming direct from the farmers, from the scientists, from the veterinarians, from these experts, and then taking that information and digesting it in a way that everybody can understand. So I'm sure in the dietitian world, you guys see that all the time, where you could talk to an expert and then I could even have a conversation with a dietitian. They could totally be talking over my heads. And oftentimes you meet a scientist and you say, what do you do? And then they say something and you go, can you explain that in layman's terms? And then they do it again. And then you're like, I still don't get it. And it's like, we're not stupid people. It's just oftentimes some of the smartest people, you even get it with farmers, right? Like farmers have been farming their whole lives. And I have to say, hold on, guys, you have to remember that the average person doesn't know what a combine is. Like they don't know what a soybean field looks like. And so it is so important to remember to explain it in a way that everybody can understand. Like use analogies, use ways where you can turn farming cool, a way that everybody gets it, right? So yeah, definitely advocate, connect with different farmers. I know one of the questions I had earlier was what sort of resources are out there. Like GMOanswers.com is one of my favorite websites to learn about GMOs. Professor Kevin Folta, he's got a Facebook page, Kevin M. Folta. He's a professor of horticulture science at UF, University of Florida. As far as livestock, if you're on Twitter or just you can Google these people like Frank Mitloner of UC Davis, Dr. Sarah Place, Dr. Allison Van Eneman. These are some people that are on Twitter that you can just Google their names and you'll bring up a ton of great information. Any type of extension from University Extension, Department of Agriculture, Colleges of Poultry Science. I tour a lot of these centers and we all should. Through social media, we have the power to connect with these experts in ways that we never thought possible. And it's really cool to know that they'll open their doors and say, wow, like, thanks for showing me this. Like, we're open books. You just have to take some time to connect. So let's see. Yes, there are more estrogens in a potato than a beef treated with hormones. Yes, so true. Let's see if there's other questions I had sent beforehand. I think, yeah, we kind of talked about some of the biggest myths. Looking to see if there's any other questions from you guys. I'm really enjoying this, but the more you bring at me, the more interactive this can be, which is a lot more fun. Like I said, I am thefarmbabe.com is my website. You can check it out. I'm also a weekly columnist with agdaily.com. So I write an article about agriculture every week. And any sort of questions or comments you guys have, send them my way. Oftentimes, you guys are my motivation for what I'm going to talk about next or write about is like comment sections when I read stuff and people say, well, what about this? And I'm like, let me dig in on that and find out the answer. And then it's just up to us to dig into the real experts. Always go to the source, right? Like if you just Google it, you guys as dietitians could probably totally understand how much misinformation is out there with the nutrition world. I remember when I had a personal trainer, I used to live in Chicago in my 20s, and I remember I had this personal trainer who's like, well, if you want to lose weight and get healthy, you have to give up gluten. She wasn't my trainer for long. But we see that all the time is where are the people with the sound science? And so it's always important to dig in on that and understand the credible evidence behind all of that. Shout out for Kevin Folta and GMO Answers. You listed some great folks on Twitter like @GHGGuru and @BioBeef. Yes, absolutely. I love them. I have learned so much from them. GHG Guru, Frank Mitloner, is like my favorite person to learn from. I mean, he's like, knows everything there is to know. He's the professor of animal science and air quality specialist at UC Davis. Any sort of questions you guys have for like livestock and the environment, he's just a pro. Like, and he's a really great speaker. What is the one thing you wish dietitians would share with their clients and patients about farming? I would just say that overall our food is very well regulated. Especially with some of the larger farms. Like if you have, say, like a McDonald's or something like that, they're always going to have like third-party audits in place. There are so many groups overseeing farming. So, you know, people think that they're just out there willy-nilly like, well, just factory farms are just destroying the planet. And it's like, oh no. That was very Wisconsin of me. Oh no. If you talk to any of these large-scale farms, like there's one close by me, for example, 1.2 million pigs. They have to pay hundreds of dollars to like EPA, to the DNR. They have to have all these regulations, all these permits, certifications, like paperwork like this thick that they have to comply to protect the environment. So I think that's one of the biggest myths is just, it seems like the bigger the farm, the more regulations they have. And so I think that is probably one of the biggest things to know, that you don't have to pay more for labels. You don't have to pay more for marketing tactics. Just realize that so many farmers care about the planet, about the animals, and about keeping your food safe. Like, we all eat what we grow, right? So it's like a guy that wants to build a table. Like, he can't like scratch up his table because he can't sell his table. And it's the same with farming. You know, we have to produce healthy, quality, good, inspected food that we eat ourselves. Otherwise, our loads get rejected and then we're out of business. So it's in our best interest as farmers and business people to create something that's the best. Let's see here. So somebody said, where in Wisconsin is your farm? Our farm's actually in northeast Iowa, but I'm 15 minutes from Wisconsin, and I grew up in Oshkosh. So what's up, Scotty? Go Packers. Let's see. My cousin has a family dairy farm in Wisconsin. I love going there to see how their farm runs. They've installed a new automated milking system, and so it's so cool and efficient, especially on a family farm. You can see it on their YouTube page. Lepiska Farms, thanks for raising awareness. Yeah, absolutely. There is robotic dairy farms nowadays where robots literally milk your cows, and you know exactly how much milk they give. Like, we kind of talked about that earlier with some of the technology on modern dairies is very cool. Could you provide a link where I could read about this? Oh, Amanda, see if there's any laws or... yeah, we'll get there in a minute. What's this reaction? I don't see her comment. Oh, well, anyway. Laws or policies that are holding farmers back? Yes, I would say that there absolutely is. Oh, gosh. I sell meat direct at local farmers markets here, and it's really hard to do sometimes because there are so many regulations. Like, you have to have a state inspection, warehouse license. There's so many different fees and licenses that you have to pay for to do it. So it can be difficult. And now this year was especially hard with COVID because the media made everybody freak out saying like, oh, there's going to be a meat shortage. And so everybody ran to their local farmer and bought up all the deep freezers and did all this stuff to buy direct, which is great. Like, I always encourage people to buy local. Like, if you can buy a quarter of a steer direct from your local farm, A, you save a ton of money. B, you're supporting the farmer and they're able to make a little bit more profit. C, you're supporting the fact that in order for farms to do that, sometimes, depending on state regulations, because it does vary from state to state, I will say that. But oftentimes, for them to sell direct, they have to go through a lot of loopholes. So you're supporting all that, right? And the farmer oftentimes can make a little bit more money. So you're saving, they're making, so many great things going on. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard too right now because a lot of market prices have been down, and I think farmers are kind of struggling to turn a profit. And then we've had like fires, we had like a hurricane in Iowa. Like, welcome to 2020. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys heard of derecho. It was very catastrophic around here, about 2 hours south of us. Didn't really affect us too much, but we just have so much. Like, farmers are just constantly thrown with so much crap, like with the weather, with regulations, with market prices, that we have no control over all these things. And so farmers will always tell you that they are optimistic and resilient people to do what we do. Let's see what else there is here. Go back, go. Excellent. Okay, I'm trying to think. I think we covered like large scale. I think we covered GMOs and pesticides. I think with pesticides, we have to remember just how regulated it is. And when you're using them, it's at a rate of like a couple ounces per acre, I think is something that I always like to drive home to people, that if pesticide residues are on your produce, they're at rates of like parts per billion. So here's another great resource. There's safefruitsandveggies.com. You can put in, like, if you are a 190-pound male, and it'll tell you how many servings of fresh produce you have to eat in order for pesticide residues to affect you. So for example, I did it once for me, and I think I had to eat something like 9,000 potatoes in a single serving in order for pesticides to affect you. Like, something silly like that. It's just the dose makes the poison, and you're looking at like parts per billion, and you should wash your produce anyway. So a lot of it we have to remember is fear-based marketing. Like, when you look at a package of food, there's probably like 20 different labels on it. And you're like, what does all this mean? Like, at some point, I actually had a conversation with my friend in Chicago last week. She's like, I just don't even pay attention anymore, because at some point, are we just labeling the consumer to death? And the answer is kind of like, yes. Like, a lot of it's just marketing fluff. So buy what tastes good, buy what's affordable, buy what's local, buy what you like. personally, I don't buy anything that has misleading labels. Like if it says non-GMO, I put it back on the shelf. If it says organic, I put it back on the shelf. Not because I have anything against those farming methods, but I just have something against the marketing. When consumers are lied to, like that's just my personal opinion. I can't do it. GMOs have done great things for farmers. They've allowed us to use less pesticides, save crops from disease, grow more crop on less land, have drought resistance. There's a lot of really great things behind why are we even modifying plants? Like there's a reason we need to do it so that we can sustain the world and continue to feed the world sustainably and all that good stuff. So anyway, let's see what else we got here. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat. It wasn't so bad. I was really nervous. I don't ever do anything like this before. I was like, oh, like Facebook Live. I don't know if I can talk to myself. But I appreciate you guys being interactive because I don't feel like I'm talking to myself anymore. Although I'm surprised Feliance, the farm cat, hasn't made an appearance. This is probably like the first video that I've ever done that she isn't in. And normally she's like climbing all over me because she loves the camera. Let's see. She said there are more estrogens in potatoes than meat. I'm a clinical dietitian, so you can imagine the questions I get. Yeah, for sure. Meat treated with hormones specifically. Awesome as always. Thank you. Oh, thanks you guys. I really appreciate it. I guess, we can probably wrap it up. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but I don't want to bore you all to death. But again, my name's Michelle Miller, so you can visit me on thefarmbabe.com. I am a public speaker on all things agriculture, so it's great to connect with dietitians because I may not be a nutrition expert, but I do know a lot about farming. You can check out my articles on agdaily.com. And I'm a farmer here in Northeast Iowa with row crops and livestock, and I'm a social media influencer. And so that's a little bit about what I do as the Farm Babe in a nutshell. And before COVID, I was traveling a lot more, but hopefully we're getting back to that area soon where I can be back out at universities and scientists and laboratories and farms. And that's really my passion, is being there with the experts on the ground and taking that information and sharing that with you. So if I can help you guys with anything, let me know. Michelle Miller, the Farm Babe, signing off. Take care, guys.